Welcome to WaterTrek 360. As a longtime scuba diver and someone who's been doing underwater videography for a while, I decided to switch to a two-camera system so I could provide a more robust video experience. I've chosen the Insta360R. I picked this up last year, and I've upgraded to the GoPro Hero 9. Now, I understand what folks are thinking. This is not an apples to apples comparison. It was never meant to be a head-to-head review, but really a review of their functional capabilities in the system I'm working on. Now, I will say that the 360 that I have here, I am not showing 360 mode in the video, and the reason is I had some stitching issues when I got the camera last year. This was the housing that was being promoted by InstaOne. This is the housing that is being promoted now by InstaOne in 2021. However, this didn't show up until after I was video with this one in Florida. This video is also not a review of camera settings or post-production techniques, other than, I do reference some of those, but it's really around using a two-camera system and what worked for me and what didn't work for me. So let's take a look. So let's review stitching in Insta360 Studio. Your options are normal, lens guards, FPV, dive case above water, dive case below water, and custom. Normal and custom were very similar. FPV and lens guard were also similar. What surprised me was that dive case above water worked better for me than dive case below water. Regardless, if you look at all the stitches, they all take up to about 4 seconds for the fish to reappear once they disappeared into the stitch line. That was a little disappointing. All right, let's compare videos. In my first version of this InstaOne 360R review, I bashed InstaOne for not having Aquavision AI specifically for the 360R lens like the rest of their lenses. It shortchanged those of us who bought the dual lens system. Now, kudos to them for listening to their consumers, and they've added it to their latest firmware. The nice part is you can also process video shot before the updated firmware, like this one, as long as you update your camera, then phone, and Studio 2021. The AI color correction is a major improvement. It reconciled yellows and oranges not seen in a previous review. Aquavision at shallow depths works as advertised. At deeper depths, red, yellow color nuances will still need help from a red filter. A housing capable of attaching a filter is needed. You will see issues with light balance once you process with Aquavision, as you will see in many of the upcoming clips. You see washout of highlights due to AI correction, especially in going from dark areas to light. One feature they both do well is stabilization. They spent a lot of time on their stabilization AI, and it shows. I had a Hero 4 for a long time, and improvements are noticeable, and certainly better than a Sony HDV I was using many years ago. This next little clip is a clear indication of washout while using Aquavision post-production. With a 360, unless you manage the viewing direction carefully post-production, you can get vignetting on the outside edges when viewed as standard video. With the Hero, I would normally use super wide, giving the most options for viewing, but that too can vignette in corners, but it's easily fixed post-production. Didn't use super wide here. Maybe I should have with the Hero. My thought process was to use the 360 for wide sweeping footage and the Hero for more close-ups. One item to note that doesn't show in the videography, I do think the Hero battery is better, maybe 20% more life than the 360R. During this dive, the 360 died before the Hero, even though both were fully charged at the start of the dive. I'm not sure if it's the battery's ability to handle colder conditions that you get topside, but it was an event. I also see a bit more graininess. I have to assume that this is a byproduct of the AI. I think the AI for Aquavision needs more work handling midtones, but that's my opinion. Regardless, these are still nuisances, and by adding Aquavision to the 360R, InstaOne has improved, in my overall opinion, the camera's ability, especially for use in deeper diving. The Hero probably has a little better sound, but it's really a wash. I never use the sound for underwater video except maybe as a tiny bit of background noise. No one really wants to hear someone breathing on a regulator for too long. Anyway, more than likely you're going to use some other sound or music to compensate. Originally, when I started underwater filming, I used a Sony HDV camera with a giant bubble housing. A two-camera setup back then would have been a real challenge. I switched to GoPro Hero 4 due to cost and convenience, and now with 360 underwater technology, catching up to topside, this type of setup makes sense to me. Another item I noticed in post-production was 360 vignetting with aggressive movement. When I would do a sweeping turn and went too quickly, the 360 tended to have a lot more vignetting than Hero. That makes sense a bit. Both cameras were in a fixed position. The monoscopic Hero was just taking what was in front of it, but the 360's AI had to interpret what was along those seam lines and adjust to that speed. Regardless, if you are diving, you need to remember to turn and move more slowly anyway for better footage. However, the 360 seems to be more sensitive to said movement. This is where I need to go back and revisit my rig setup. The Hero is catching a nice close-up of a rockfish as I had intended. However, the 360 is basically useless where I had it. Which is okay, as I had different cameras for different purposes. You can notice a severe stitch line on the 360, but what this really means is I need to modify my rig to allow more flexibility in the way I can position the cameras in use. This tiny clip highlighted for me the benefit of having two types of cameras every time I dive. Each has capabilities I want to use, and I now need to adapt my equipment to take advantage of their strengths. Another common condition we find as wreck divers is darkness. If you're on a wreck and interested in going inside and doing penetration, you will find that the light changes rapidly, especially in cloudy weather or murky conditions. It can drastically change what the camera records, and you may be disappointed in your footage later on. You can see the light circles on the 360 footage caused by the strobes, but I was impressed to see how much the 360 picked up compared to the Hero. I pushed into the bow hold, and the 360 did pretty well with picking up more of the surrounding area than Hero. I think if I used super wide, that might have been a little better for the Hero 9, but I'm not sure, and I will certainly test that out in a future dive. This clip shows where the functionality diverges, the apples and oranges argument. Here you see a stationary shot. Again, discount that the Hero is not in super wide and that 360 stitching is not clean. This still shows post-production capabilities. Who knows what's behind you? It could be a shark. The 360 also gives you the capability of emulating drone footage, at least on the surface, that you won't get out of a Hero. Here's another fun feature that I wanted out of a 360 camera. I know some folks are not into or new to underwater 360 photos, but for me they are a great way to expand underwater art and add a new experience for folks to view and visualize what we see underwater. The number of different ways that you can take 360 footage and recraft it and reorganize it is really endless and up to the extent of the person's imagination. I hope this video demonstrates what I was trying to accomplish with the two-camera setup. If you find these photos as interesting and as beautiful as I do, then maybe a two-camera setup is right for you as well. There are many options and types of cameras to use, but I will, going forward, have at least two with me to have the greatest artistic flexibility I can get. I'm not sponsored by either one of these companies. The equipment is my own. As I said, this wasn't a competition. I was trying to leverage two different types of technology and to create a more robust underwater filming experience. I hope that you got something out of this clip, found it informative, maybe provoke some ideas of your own, and change how you might do underwater videography in the future. Please, if you did like it, click like, subscribe. I got plenty more videos, underwater dive sites, and snorkeling from around the world. Until next time, go explore, get wet.